I will call this meeting of the Economic Development Committee to order in joint session with the Plan Commission. All members of ED are present, and I will turn it over to you. Thank you.
And I will call this meeting, this joint meeting of the Plan Commission, along together with the Economic Development Committee to order. And we have a quorum present, so we're all set to go.
Yes, well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for being together for just a short session. We thought this was timely because of the continued evolution of the River Life Villages Phase 1 planning process, and the fact that a special meeting was needed for the PlanCom anyways, and conveniently fell on the night of the Economic Development Committee meeting. So thank you for spending a little bit extra time with us tonight. I would, as you can see, we added to the packet, the continued draft or continued process that's going forward with the VGUD OD Riveron group. They have continued to refine the existing plans in an effort to come up with kind of their final proposal. That's still a bit in progress, but they are, kind of sharing some of their, kind of continued work to that end in a hope of arriving at a final layout, a final unit count and unit mix, and a final detail of elevation specifications, which then the committees and council can vote on. We were, obviously working as fast as we can to get the project restarted, and I know that their architect team is working as well as fast as they can. Lots of work going on behind the scenes to get everything ready to facilitate a restart of the project. So we are still planning, as we've said before, to have a term sheet, which would an amended term sheet and kind of final plans set for mid-May, for May 14th council meeting. But perhaps I'd like to just invite Mitch to come up and just kind of share. Mitch and Bob are both here to just share their, kind of continued work, with both committees here tonight, just kind of share their continued process and some of the considerations that they're going to be making in refining these plans before they're totally finalized. So, welcome.
Bob's been working with the architect.
Just names and addresses for the record,
Mitch
please.
VGUD, 517 Franklin Street, Wausau.
Bob Odie, 11761 County Road A, Wausau.
So as the mayor and Christian and I have been talking, working together on the ED agreement. It's currently at the attorney. So that's been a process moving forward. Bob's been working with the architect on designs, pretty much sticking along the same lines of what had been going on, but you could tell them a little bit about.
Yeah, basically we've taken the footprint that we have and we tried to mix in between different plans and coming out a layout, a little bit smaller units, some larger units, some diversity of working out to get mixed use for different desired appetite of people there and trying to figure out what's the best concept to do. We think we've got a pretty solid, with the management company, just had a meeting again late today with them. I think we got a footprint, the floor plan that I think you guys may have that's really, really close to what we're looking at doing, the actual layout. Working with some mechanical guys, trying to get some input. And then the next stage is the elevations. I think you've got a thing there that shows the elevations that we worked on this last weekend. Gives you a pretty good idea of what we got to start to work with. We're kind of looking for some input from our team and anybody else that's out there, what we think is WAS's desire of what it should look like. That's always a big thing. Everybody seems to have some input they like to have on that. We don't want to design it one way and everybody dislikes it going the other way, so we've got to finish it up, but at least we got the outside elevation, what it looks like with the balconies, with the larger windows, so that gives you some idea of pretty close to what it's going to look like. You can imagine of different colors and facade of what it makes up, but at least it gets you a point of what it looks at. We're still pushing a few things together, and again, Mitch has been working on the economic sides and working with the city as far as what it's going to take to make it work. There's a chance we go to the fourth story on this thing to make it part of that system too. That hasn't been determined yet, but 3 units, I think we're up to 56 units, and if we go to the 4th floor, it's 75. So I think we've got a pretty good mix. We've got a great thing for the city. I think it's going to be a great product when it's done. But again, we've got to figure out that final facade, and I think we're really close on the rest of the stuff, just a little fine tuning. So I think we're really close on that.
Yeah, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Alder Rasmussen had a question.
I do, thank you. I like the renderings that we see here in the packet. I think diversifying the mix of units of various sizes to meet different housing demand. I mean, obviously, different tenants have different needs, so that completely makes sense. As I look at the rendering, though, I like the balconies and the larger windows as well. I think that with the view out there, people are going to want to be out there and have that view and that access. The one thing that I noticed, though, is if we rewind to the original renderings, there was a little more of a mixture of material and color. And this particular rendering looks, and I don't know if that was intentional, like it's primarily brick.
Yeah, that was
And-
not
That was,
So-
that was just a plug on the pro that shows something. And it could be all brick, it could be different than brick, it could be brick in different colors. That's why I said we're kind of looking for some input of what the local people in Wausau would like, and then we'll put it together as a final elevation page. So that was, to be honest with you, that was 11 o'clock Sunday night that we got done with the drawings, and that was something that we got the elevations that we could put it so our group could look at it and say, pick up the balconies, this is what it is.
Yep.
I know
That's
there's
the
a lot
only
of brick
thing that
buildings
stood
close
out
by.
to me was that it is a preponderance of brick, and I think while there's a place for that, it also gives a more industrial and utilitarian feel. And so I think that in the original renderings that we had looked at, and our vision for the project in the riverfront was that it would be a mixture of, high-end materials, like mixed materials and a mixture of color and texture, but not all one thing. And, that, perhaps if that design was broken up a little bit, with some inserts of,
That's
a different
exact-
material or color, if that's your vision, that's all I
Exactly what we were
noticed.
talking about today, and we're continuing that with the architect right now.
Yeah, that's
Get the urban look, more of a
yeah, and just
multicolor.
something that's a little,
Multi-line, but that
Yeah.
picture was not.
yeah, that's the only thing that stood out, but I think mixing up the unit sizes is a great idea.
I have just one question about the balconies themselves. We often see in apartment buildings, this, they call it a balcony, but it's about, 30 inches deep, and you can barely put a chair in, or like a little baby Weber out there or whatever. Are these going to be somewhat deeper, like cantilevered, and to accommodate a bit more elbow room? And I think that helps to, from a curb appeal, if you will, from passersby. It kind of gives it a more of a sophisticated and upscale look than those short little patios,
Right.
balconies.
Yeah, I guess to answer your question, the balconies are drawn per scale on the plan. They are 6 feet deep from the building, so you have enough room to set a chair there and a little table. It's not big enough to have a party out there by no means, but two people can sit out and have a piece of wine and a glass of wine and some cheese and look down the river, and, there is enough room for that on the balcony. So we did use that in consideration of the designing of it. The one unit is a little larger than that. I think it's 15 by 6. So, we definitely put that in the efforts. It's more, again, that's part of all the economics of making it work. I think the design, what we got, like I said, I think is there, if without any doubt. I think that's the best design structurally, that part of it with the bigger balconies. And like you say, they are totally functionable with a 6 foot by 11 foot is what all of them but one stack is.
Anything else from the ED committee? Mr. Gisselman?
Is there a corporate entity with that the three of you are
Right
existing
now,
under?
it's Wausau River Life LLC is the.
So that's your corporate?
That's our corporate.
Your corporate,
yeah. Now, we may change that name to something, but that is the corporate
okay.
name, yeah.
So
Are we still planning to go into closed session, or?
I'm just going to ask if there's any other questions from any of the Plan Commission members or not. Okay. All right.
Yeah, we do.
Well,
yeah,
my
we do-
question is, are we at a point where we would go into a closed session to consider any action, or simply to sort of talk about it? Because I don't really see action.
I don't see action
called
being
for at
needed
this
for this
point.
right now. Basically, it's just an update for everybody as far as what's happening.
So go to close
That's a little-
for update?
If you wish.
If you
but-
want to, I don't see the need for it.
I
frankly.
don't see a need to go to close myself at this point. So-
But the,
Send him else.
Go ahead, Mr.
But
Kissel.
then in 2 weeks, I mean, what are we going to be presented in, shortly in the middle of May? I mean, are we
Yep.
going to be presented with
On May-
everything? Or
Yes,
what
on May,
exact?
we expect on May 14th to have a revised term sheet, and on May 21st, at the next Planning Commission meeting, to have kind of the final plans for UDD approval, so those should be able to, kind of fire in tandem.
And the financing and all that is,
That'll be in the term sheet
That'll
on
be
May
in the term
14th,
sheet.
yep. If you do have questions or, other considerations from an Economic Development Committee, we could go into closed session to discuss it. But I think to the chairperson's point is, tonight was really about giving an update with as much planning detail, as much detail about the unit mix and about the, kind of look and feel of what, the Phase 1 building will look like that we could get together in this amount of time. You can appreciate these folks have been working obviously very hard over the past short window to try to get all these details sorted, so.
I was just going to make mention that I know you've been scrambling, to get to this point, and we appreciate it. And I thank you for your interest here and excited to see, how this unfolds.
Thank you. We welcome the opportunity. We look forward to making a great place in Wausau for everybody to enjoy.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And like we had said, there's really no reason to go into closed session, so really, that's the only item that we had for the joint Plan Commission and Economic Development Committee. I will entertain a motion right now to adjourn for the Plan Commission. Motion by Mr. Zart, do I have a second? By Mr. Bolkin. Those commissioners in favor signify by saying aye. We are adjourned, thank you, everybody. Up for ED now.
Okay, just a second to kind of get redistributed, and we'll continue with the ED meeting.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, we are prepared to continue with the ED-only portion of the session. So our first item, and number 4 on the agenda, approval of the minutes from our April 2nd meeting of this year. Do I have a motion to approve? From Mr. Peckham, do I have a second? From Mr. Martins? Any concerns, alterations? Seeing none, all in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And none are. Thank you. Number 5, discussion and possible action on the amended terms and plan for the sale of the properties at 401 and 415 South First Avenue, the erstwhile West Side Battery.
So I think,
Mr.
as
Shaw.
everyone knows, we've been working very diligently with Clint at Westside Battery about trying to, or at Urban Street Bistro, to finalize the whole package for Westside Battery, which of course involves, not uncomplex or incomplex financing and lots of, and a big renovation. So that the process is moving forward. We're hopeful that that can be finalized in the coming weeks. Of course, we've said that before, and Clint knows that, but he is working towards that end. We've included a resolution for the committee's consideration, which would update the last kind of committee action or council action, which was to approve the increase in the sale amount to reflect, another year of taxes. This would be tax year 2018. Yep, due January 1st, 2019. And so that number reflects that, another year of taxes. These taxes were estimated, if you recall, based on the assessment before we owned, before we owned the property. So, that was back in the day. So Clint is here, I see, so maybe he'd want to just come up and give an update on his continued work, and then, and then questions for him. So,
Absolutely.
welcome. Yeah.
Thank you, appreciate it. We are moving forward. I think we finally in the last stages now, up and down, up and down. It's been a long process, obviously much longer than we anticipated. At the end of the day, came to a situation where we're approaching the $2 million mark, and we just all had to stop and take a look at it as a whole and say, is this really how much we need, or are we trying too hard to make everybody happy? So we've got it trimmed back to a much more reasonable, just under $1 million right now. That said, that brought us back into in-house financing. So we're still working with Abbey Bank. We're pretty confident that we can have everything closed within the next 60 days.
Okay. Yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about, to the committee, what has changed from your original, kind of plan? Most of
Sure.
it is kind of
Most
trim
of
and
it's-
details, but yeah,
Most of
maybe
it's
they'd want-
construction.
Yeah.
We decided to forego the brewery and the large addition that we'd originally looked at putting on the backside. We decided that that should be more of a phase thing. Keep it more affordable, get it open, get it running. That'll be a phase 2 project should we want to get into it. Some of the other changes really came into the build-out. Just a lot of our travels this summer. We ate at a lot of places that we had expected a lot of work that was more rebuilding the interior, studding the whole thing out, insulating it, things like that. A lot of the buildings we were at, that wasn't the case, and we really liked the appeal of it better. As far as energy efficiency goes, that was originally our plan for it, the reason for studying it out, but in the end, when we redo the roof and insulate that, 80% of that's going to be our energy efficiency rating. So a little bit of that. Everything else on the interior is the same. Still the patio, still the parking lot. Majority is really just the addition and foregoing the marine operations. Kind of figured also, stick with food, deal with that. That's our main focus as it is, and go from there.
Okay, anything from the committee on this? I would ask the committee, does anybody anticipate a need to go into closed on this item? Doesn't seem like it. Okay. Our agenda does call for possible action on this, so I would entertain a motion to approve the amended terms as summarized by Mr. Schock.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second? Mr. Martins? Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And none are. Thank you.
All right, thank you, I appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Clint. All right, number 6, discussion and possible action on the commercial rehabilitation application received for the property at 415 South First Avenue.
Yep, so we're still working with Clint on that. We've talked about using some commercial rehab funds, which, as you know, are departmental funds, but go to the ED committee for recommendation. We'll work on kind of finalizing that and bringing that as soon as we can. When the bank financing, this moves kind of in tandem, and we want to be sure that everything is ready to go.
We're meeting with them this week, the bank,
Yep.
finalize that, so you'll have those loan applications this week.
Is the commercial rehabilitation money for more exterior type work?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, as you might recall, the committee might recall, the commercial rehab loan is kind of one of the more major programs that our department administers, and we've done lots of different projects downtown, including many of the storefronts. And it's not just for downtown, it is citywide, and it is focused on kind of the renovation, especially the exterior renovation of commercial properties that are that need work. This appears to be a good candidate for that. It's not necessarily tied to the to the sale of the property. Those aren't necessarily linked. Doesn't have to be a city project, obviously, to qualify for that loan.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve the application received for...
No, we don't have
There
it
is-
yet.
There's none?
Yeah,
Oh,
we'll
okay.
bring it back, though.
Okay, we've got possible action on
Yep.
here. Okay.
It just wasn't complete at
All
time
right.
of.
I was driving east on Stewart this afternoon, and I noticed that really sizable billboard facing me that's like in front of your building. And I thought, boy, what an opportunity to get your name up there when the time is right, and just say what you are and what you got. So right now, I forget what's up there, but it's a great placement for you. All right, then, we'll move on. Number 7, discussion and possible action on the allocation of business campus property at Enterprise Circle to the Wausau Police Department for a storage facility and future shooting range.
Yes, so tonight joining us is Deputy Chief Barnes to discuss this proposal. As you know, I think from the CIP process, the city had approved funding for the PD to build a new long-term storage warehouse. We've been looking and working cooperatively with the PD to find the best location for such a facility, and I think we've come up with a good idea that places it at a kind of a quieter corner of Enterprise Circle, kind of between two properties that kind of allows a future, if there is a shooting range in the future, it would be a potentially good place for a shooting range because it's up against a wetland. It's adjacent to the freeway, so there's already a lot of ambient noise. We'll see if everyone's swerving in their lanes when they but yeah, so there's, and this is a good, it seems like a good location for that kind of project. So we've included the map to kind of show a potential lot, and we've included some, kind of building specifications that the PD has been working with MTS on, and maybe Matt wants to give more information.
Sure. First, from a funding standpoint, I don't know if the committee members recall, we didn't make the CIP cut with this project. However, the council graciously approved us to borrow that money as part of the loan regarding the fire department's new building.
No.
So that was the funding source for this. We did work with Chris on trying to identify a location as we anticipate needing to own our own shooting range as opposed to use 3M property on the northwest side of Wausau, past Fleet Farm, which is where we currently are. This would be a long-term project. It would be CIP focused, so that would come back before you again as we try and slowly incorporate building that. We do need this year and have worked with MTS and feel pretty comfortable that we're able to build this facility, this evidence storage warehouse. This year, this fall, we'd be looking at a September, October build time for that. And the big concern at this point was we need the city to formally approve or allocate that property on Enterprise Drive to the police department or to the city for the use by the police department.
Ergo, that's why it comes to the ED committee, because it's sort of a non-ED type thing that it would be turning around to, so. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. Right, because it's business campus property, and that's kind of our thing. But separate from that, I think when we were looking for a parcel of land, part of the appeal of this site for this use was that based on its size and its access and its sort of awkward shape, it lent itself well to this use, but not so much to the siting of a third-party business so close between the other two. Was that kind of where we left off on the
Yep.
location?
And you also see there's a sewer and, communications
Easements are all in
easement
there,
that kind
yeah.
of creates a weird kind of corner, and then, all the wetlands in the back, which, it just seems like a good location of the remnants that we have left out there. This seems to be least marketable for the private sector and most pragmatic for the PD.
Well, and it does come out to be a win-win then. It meets a need that public safety has, but it's also something that, but for this type of a use, given its shape and the layout and the access to the site, that, we may not be able to get a third party to use it anyway, and they certainly couldn't comfortably, depending on what they're trying to do. So I think this use certainly makes sense. With that, I'll make a motion that we transfer the property to the city for that use.
Thank you. Do I have a second for that motion? Mr. Peckham? Yes, I mean, we're all well aware of how important it is to get this thing done, so I certainly support it too from where I sit. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, I throw my aye in there as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Number 8, discussion and possible action on the sale of business campus property on Innovation Way to Corey Thorson of Composite Envisions.
Great. So we had agendized this in hopes of having all this information put together, but time ran out. Corey is still working on this. We've highlighted a lot, a 11.3 acres parcel, this is immediately east of the Great Lakes Cheese Facility on Innovation Way. So if you look on this map, just to the east here in this kind of blank area is now a very obviously large manufacturing facility, but they've highlighted a parcel there. As you might recall, Composite Envisions has been a partner with the city for many years and quite a success story in their continued expansion and growth. They moved into, they're in their second building now and looking to expand into their third. So it's a positive thing. But it's not quite actionable yet, so we wanted to include it in thinking that it might be actionable, but if you'll grant us the patience to just table this, we'll be back at the next committee meeting with his specific proposal. He is working with a few different banks and construction companies to determine the final scope of what they're going to actually place on this parcel and its value and other things which of course affect financing and affect his gap analysis as well for our request. So he is working on that and we're hopeful that that can come together shortly.
No problem at all. I don't know if anybody is particularly aware of what it is they do out there, but it's pretty amazing stuff. I mean, the high-tech materials that they develop and are used in applications, everything from race cars and racing boats to, I wouldn't be surprised, aerospace. Really incredible stuff. So just seeing that they're succeeding and expanding is really good news.
Any thoughts on this potential lot?
I have a quick question, I guess, with this expansion and his growth, because the growth has been rapid, I mean, no question. Is this an additional building location site for him, or is it a larger facility at which time then we would have a need to repurpose his old one? Or is this going to be a companion building where he'd operate from both sites?
No, that's a great question. We understand he will sell his existing building, on Development Court, and this would be a new building. We have worked with him over the past couple months to determine whether it was wise for him to expand the existing building, at the current site, or whether it was better for him to build a new building that more fits his needs, we've worked with him in moving from his original smaller building into the current one at Development Court. And he feels, and he'll be here at the, at the next committee meeting when it's ready. He'll be able to kind of explain why, a new building is more his interest. So he owns the one on Development of Court, of course, and he would sell it then to a different industrial user.
Okay, makes sense, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Oh,
do we need to wait to approve this waiver of first refusal or whatever it is until we have a formal proposal in hand, or can we do it preemptively?
Oh, sorry.
When you're ready, we
Those
don't
are-
want that land.
Yeah, those are separate topics. So this is we're just tabling number 8, which is the sale of this parcel, and we'll address that later. Yep.
Just a quick question on that one also. With regard to the original development agreement that was executed with Composite a few years ago, they were expected to experience rapid growth, and I think that in planning for some longevity in the business campus, there was a caveat in that original agreement that required a 10-year stay. But that was a 10-year stay in Wausau, not necessarily a 10-year stay on that particular parcel. So I think we'll need to check that development agreement and make sure that we have that properly dealt with as he transfers to a new site. Because if he sells that property prior to 10 years, we have to make sure that we have that proper amendment in his paperwork.
Yeah, correct. So we believe it is in the building, so, which is okay, but
Okay.
we'll consider that then as part of his proposal to, kind of change
Right.
that amendment or amend the agreement, to
Right.
reflect this change. Because
Right.
obviously we encourage
Well,
their
the goal was to
expansion,
have him
yeah.
stay in Wausau and continue to grow and
Sure.
employ here. It certainly was not to hinder him from getting bigger. So we'll have to manage that expectation, though.
Yeah, we're aware of
All
that,
right.
yep.
Thanks.
Great, thanks.
Boy, what a memory. Whew. It's kind of scary.
You're frightened, Sarah.
All right, number 9, discussion and possible action on the request received related to rent calculations for the Wausau Center Mall. Something happening?
Okay, no, we are aware of continued discussions between our attorney and their attorney. We had agendized this again in a proactive step in hopes that there would be an actual proposal for consideration, but that is not meant to be yet. Wasn't meant or wasn't timely by yesterday when the agenda needs to be nailed down. So we did want to just ensure, we were thinking of having as an update, but we did want to have an opening if there was going to be a formal proposal. We're very thoughtful about the timeline here because we had agreed to an extension on their audit requirement. But there is ongoing dialogue between the attorneys, and we are hopeful to receive a written proposal shortly.
Very good. Well, all of that seems to preclude any need to go into closed session, so we can move on to item number 12. Discussion and possible action on city's waiver of right to repurchase property at 300 South 84th Avenue.
Okay, so this is a right of first refusal on a piece of property related to Piper Products in the business campus, and is also here tonight if you had specific questions. From our understanding, this is essentially an internal transfer between controlling entities, so it appears to be in order to approve the right of first refusal.
To not exercise our option.
That's correct.
Okay.
Waive the right to repurchase.
Okay. Anything?
So
Yes,
moved.
Mr. Peckham. I have a motion from Mr. Peckham. Do I have a second? Mr. Martins. Anything further on the topic? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None are. Thank you. Moving right along, number 13, discussion and possible action on the proposed TID 8 map boundary adjustment. What's that all about?
Yeah, so, we continue to do some strategy planning around, especially around TIF 8 and addressing some, construction shortfall needs for First Avenue and some other topics that have come up. And we've also talked about, leveraging TIF 8 for some, kind of potential projects in the offing, including Mountain Lanes, which we have, kind of already approved, and some potential other things that would be coming along that corridor. As you know, TIF 6 is closing shortly along 17th Avenue, and so we've added a couple, especially non-taxable parcels, which does not affect does not affect the district or the levy, to incorporate some of the projects that are ongoing or coming in the near future. Mary Ann's here too as well to help address any questions of the committee.
I just, what is the end date for this district? Yeah, come on up if you could, Mary Ann, please.
You can see we're also including kind of the parcels at the, kind of recently, kind of put together the plans for the recently approved commercial redevelopment at Bridge and First as well. That was one of the topics.
So the last date to incur project costs in TID 8 is 2034, and its final termination date would be 2039. When we initially started down the path on the redevelopment of Mountain Lanes, we thought that we could, perhaps get that into tax increment district number 6. But you know how these schedules start to draw out, then we were concerned that there wouldn't be sufficient time, because by the time you generate an increment in a district and then collect tax, there's 2 years that have gone by. So this was an alternate. If you look at the northern tip of TID 8, you can see several parcels that are small, tiny parcels that are being added. There is someone that has purchased many of those lots and is combining them into one lot. And the Department of Revenue has told us we do need to do a boundary amendment, because one of the parcels was in TID 8 and the rest of them were outside of TID 8. And since it will become one parcel, they would want us to do a boundary amendment to fix that issue. So since we were going to be amending the district boundaries to deal with that issue, this idea of, looking at change to the map. And again, as Chris pointed out, most of the property that's being added in has no value, because it's either the two-year college, or it's Marathon Park, or it's John Muir Middle School. And so all of those have zero values. And it just gets us to 17th Avenue to deal with this issue of the Mountain Lanes and perhaps the Plaza Hotel too.
And we're well within the radius of allowable
Yes.
expansion.
Yes. It should be fine there. And like I said, its closure date would be sooner than if we were to create a new district, but it gives us plenty of time.
Now, just a quick question on that. Is this, for a short time, we'd have overlap between TID 6 and TID 8, right, along 17th Avenue?
Yes.
So the plaza, from the plaza to Quick Trip, that exists in TID 6 today, right?
The plaza does
The
not.
plaza does not.
The plaza does not. Okay, so, but Quick Trip, the highway department, that, along both sides of 17th, that is in TID 6, isn't it?
I believe
Or is it just the west
Yeah, I
side of the
believe it.
street?
No, I believe both sides, yeah.
Okay, and so, given the relatively short lifespan left of TID 6, it is not a problem for us to have that property exist in both locations for that short time?
No, certainly
Right.
not.
No.
Okay, all right, that was the only question I had.
Yep.
Okay, anything else from the committee? Mr. Peckham?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I guess Mary Ann or Chris, I don't understand the addition of Quick Trip on the bottom. I can see the Marathon County Highway Department, because that might become available for some other use in the future, but Quick Trip? That's under construction.
Right. I think that we were thinking that we could capture some increment to help with infrastructure costs in the district, in TID 8, particularly given some of the issues that we're having with First Avenue, that it would just provide a little bit of cushion for the First Avenue project.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned that, keep in mind TIF 8 is contributing to the First Avenue reconstruction and to Thomas Street.
Right.
Not to Thomas.
Oh, not to Thomas Street? It's all by 6.
Yes,
And First Avenue is 6 and 8.
correct.
There you go.
Okay.
But you wouldn't have to include it. It was just a thought.
The option of is by not including it is having taxing to our general operating fund, so. I mean,
Right.
Yeah,
And-
Quick Trip's revenue ends up in the general fund if they're not inside the lines, and if they are, it stays out, so.
Right.
Thoughts from the committee on this question?
The current cash flow shows that TID 6 will be able to pay for First Avenue on its own without that additional increment. There is, yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I guess that's one thing we'll have to watch is what we do with Quick Trip, because that particular site, that site sold for, when that site was leveled and made clean and green for development, part of that agreement stated that if the property was sold for, in excess of a certain amount of money, that the excess was shared back to the city, to take care of the costs that we had for, making that happen.
Demolition and-
Yeah, all of it. And the sale price that Quick Trip paid, I believe, was less than that threshold. So we're not getting anything back on what we had invested in that site. So, I think the idea that, if we want to reclaim increment into TID 8, TID 8 is young, and, it's got a long lifespan, and lots of things in terms of development and redevelopment could happen there without Quick Trip. So I think we just have to decide if we want to include or exclude it. I mean, you may have some future redevelopment possibilities with the highway shop if they move, but, Quick Trip being brand new, I mean, it's new revenue, that's for sure. But, is it an absolute necessity? Because if it isn't, we'd maybe be wise to stop before we get to Quick Trip and let Quick Trip go to the general fund and let the other taxing entities benefit from that money.
I would anticipate some support for that kind of thinking on council as well.
I would, because, I mean, we don't want to take any more than we absolutely have to.
Right.
And I don't know, I mean, TID 6 is healthy and it's been really prosperous, and I think TID 8 can be too. It's just so new yet that, we're not even close to seeing its full potential.
Mr. Gisselman?
I would agree. I think that we should let that fall back into general funds.
Would you like a motion to that effect?
I would entertain a motion to that effect, yes.
I move that we amend this proposal to exclude Quick Trip. I think there is some justification for keeping in, considering that we do have an investment in that property, but I think it's a little iffy and we should not include it.
Mr. Martins?
I'll second that motion.
Oh, okay. Further discussion on the amended proposal here?
So approve the amendment except for Quick Trip, is that where we're at?
That was
Okay.
how I took the motion and second to be.
Okay,
All right. Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. Number 14, discussion and possible action on the acceptance, thanks, Mary Ann, by the way. Discussion and possible action on the acceptance of a forgivable loan from the Judd S. Alexander Foundation for the Live It Up program. Sure.
So we've been made aware of an opportunity for a contribution to the Live It Up program. The Judd S. Alexander Foundation Board has approved that as kind of a Live It Up challenge loan, if you will, in the sense of, obviously Live It Up is a loan program, but they'd like to see, obviously, the community continue to raise funds, to build the balance of the revolving loan pool. And so they've kind of included some measure to do that, and then would consider, obviously, forgiving that loan and make it kind of a donation to the pot at that time, should that come forward. We decided to, kind of include this. Companies and nonprofit organizations routinely make donations to our fund for the Live It Up program already at the Community Foundation of North Central Wisconsin, and we don't approve those kind of separately. But it's obviously a large donation, which is appreciated, so we thought, the committee would want to kind of see that and consider that, especially because it is the way it's structured as kind of, a forgivable loan kind of situation, which obviously if we, for some reason, didn't reach that kind of challenge loan pool number, again, the Livetta program is a loan, and we would repay that, loan from the proceeds of the program to the foundation. But we're not overly concerned about that because we have continued to see good participation in the program and its continued growth.
Director Grote, you had,
I just wanted to make sure that you understood, this would be considered general obligation debt then for the city, and would be part of our general obligation debt computation, and we have, reporting responsibilities for it. Not saying that that's a reason not to take it, but, when you're accepting a loan, you have to have council approval. It's not something that you can just take and not get formal approval, because it's not a donation, it's a loan. And
So that's why we agendized it as such. Yeah.
thoughts on that issue?
I guess if I put my finance committee hat on for a second, I worry a little bit about this. I like the idea that, I love the concept of Live It Up. We have, through our own means, capitalized that plan with seed money to get it going. Local businesses have willingly partnered and contributed to that pot. We've made some fantastic loans, which has created some great impacts for houses and increased home ownership in the city, which is our goal. But I don't want us to get into a situation where we are taking loans to make loans. And so if this was a grant offering where they love the outcomes of our program and they want to be a part of it just on principle, it certainly makes sense that we would accept a grant into the pot. But I don't think that that effort or that project should have its own set of debts to pay, because the loans that we're making are being repaid and that money can be recycled. And so if we're going to incur debt, general obligation debt, which heaven knows we have too much of or enough of already, and then we're going to have reporting requirements on that, I feel a little funny about taking money just for the sole purpose of making loans. So I guess I'm just not a fan of the way this is structured. If it was a grant, I'd say absolutely, but in this scheme,
If it was a grant, we wouldn't review it at all, obviously, so.
Well, of course, I mean, we would grab onto it with both hands, but this, given the fact that it's got those caveats, there's an element of risk involved that I don't think Live It Up needs. I think it could become self-sustaining on its own, and we continue to market it to our business community, and they enthusiastically receive it. So this just feels a little odd. I wouldn't want to do it.
Well, by the very nature of this, it seems to me it would be an item for the Finance Committee at any rate, rather than ED. So, I mean, I'm kind of a fan of not acting on it.
We can take it to both if you wish. I guess, from a staff perspective, we think that we've worked closely with the foundation to come up with a, approach that works for both their goals of being, focused on incentives and, moving the community in that direction, and also supporting the program. So, they fully intend to forgive the loan. They're setting it, obviously it's a loan converted to a grant, with the incentive of continuing to build the revolving loan pool, which is a great incentive for us to go to more community partners and to businesses and say, this is something that, a foundation and the community is working towards. It's quite common for them to do challenge grants like that. Up front, obviously Live It Up is already established, and so it's not really a challenge grant per se, like some of the other fundraising tools that they use.
I would probably entertain a motion to approve, if anybody wants, with the contingency that it would also have to be reviewed by the Finance Committee. And, acceptance of this would be contingent on both then. Mr. Peckham.
I would move that we would approve this based on our ability to come up with the other $900,000, so we're sure it's not, that it becomes a grant then rather than a loan.
Well, yeah, so we already have obviously we've already raised, allocated $650,000, so it's not another 900, it's just getting it to the $1 million mark.
Well, I don't see any downside to that. I would say if we can get to the $1 million mark, if we're sure we can do that, then we should certainly accept this money with gratitude.
Mr. Gisselman.
So what will it take to, because the letter says this loan may be converted to a grant provided that the revolving loan pool is at a minimum of 1 million. So what is it going to take to have this loan pool at $1 million?
Yeah, well, continue.
And basically when? Or-
Continued fundraising over the next, 2 years or year and whatever, year and a half to continue to get up there. Again, this is structured in a way to help, communicate to corporate leaders and others that, the foundation supports the program and that, they want to see it continue to garner outside investments, which we encourage. It's, again, many of our corporate partners, as Lisa has said, make donations already to the pot. They've chosen to structure it in a way that, creates an incentive for others in the community to see what they're doing and to step up and kind of make sure that the pot continues to grow, which it has, obviously. The revolving loan pool is, already has already, exceeded the $650,000 mark. So the difference between that and $1 million is obviously what we will continue to raise over the next day, over the period. And that's not necessarily from just private sources. It could be from, from other city sources as well. They just want to continue to see it growing. I know that the group had expressed, an interest in getting to that $1 million mark in an effort so that if it does reach that point, it then becomes increasingly self-sustaining. It really has a copious that then generates a series of loans every year, and we agree with that, obviously. So I think, it communicates what we want it to, which is, there are organizations that want to see it continue to be appreciated, and this is kind of a challenge to all the other entities to continue to invest in that.
Yes, I have a follow-up.
Yep, go ahead.
So in essence, we need somewhere between $250,000 and $350,000 to get to that million. Whether or not you count the grant, is really the variance. But the trouble with fundraising is that fundraising competes with all other fundraising. So when you're out in a community and you're fundraising for anything, you're in competition with all of the nonprofits, everyone else's projects. And so, and that said, if the economy would change and we'd have, a bubble burst or a small downturn where things start to slow down, we are then obligated if we don't get to that benchmark. And it concerns me that when we take on municipal debt, we want to take on municipal debt for absolute necessities. And so whether that be, development projects or whether that be, critical things that our city needs to manage.
The
And so
but-fors.
in my mind, Live It Up program is awesome, but if we cannot afford to recapitalize Live It Up and we have to incur debt to do it, then I think the smart thing for us to do would be perhaps to, if we would need to, put it on hiatus for a short time until the private sector contributions are such that we can then loan again, or until we've collected enough payments from the original loan acceptor, the loan awardees. If we accept enough payments back and your pool replenishes, then start to loan again. You can have ebb and flow with the loan process without taking on municipal debt to capitalize Live It Up. I just don't like the idea of the risk. If we had firm commitments from private sector businesses for up to $350,000 right now, I would do it. But we have no firm commitment, and we're out there competing with everyone else's fundraising. And I think that the structure of this, even if we want the money, the structure of this is just not smart business. I think we would be better off to either find another way to recapitalize it if we need to, or wait until some payments get repaid and then start to ramp up. Maybe you just slow down a little bit and make a few fewer loans to stay within the pool you have. It's grown on its own as an organic effort. We've not taken out loans or anything from anybody other than the participants in the plan yet. And I just don't want to see us do that. I think it muddies up the mission. And, we don't need more general obligation debt for, this plan is not a critical necessity. It's a nice to have. So I'm going to vote no if we try to approve this.
Just a second. Ms. Ryan, you have your hand up. Please state your name, address, and 3 minutes, please.
Deborah Ryan, 702 Elm Street. having worked in fund accounting for over 20 years, when you're talking about this letter, but it does not show Mr. Schock's letter to the Alexander Foundation, it appears this is really restricted funds to be for a specific purpose. It should not be in the general fund. And that way you can track and have a budget of what you propose or how you want to keep track of it, and then it will show up in the audit as such, and for other corporations that might want to contribute to it. But to say this should be in the general fund, it's against accounting principles.
I'm not sure that's what's being said, but I just wanted to clarify again, the, we had the foundation express interest in supporting the program. We, on behalf of the partnership, which obviously includes the foundation, had expressed interest in a grant. They've proposed this forgivable loan, which I think is a realistic approach. There are some communities that obviously actually do issue bonds and debts for homesteading type of programs. I'm not suggesting that. In this case, this is a forgivable loan that can be repaid because it is a loan program by its nature. Live It Up is a loan program. Yes, there is risk associated with that, and we wouldn't want to borrow a lot of debt for this purpose. This is $100,000, relatively minor amount in the scheme of the city's borrowing, but the our intentions are to convert it to a grant. We obviously expect to continue to allocate resources to the Live It Up program over time. We are already doing loans on the repayment schedule that we're receiving, so we're continuing to do that. And again, I think it's a bit of a chicken versus egg when you say, well, we want the private sector to continue to donate, and we do, and they have, and I believe will continue to. But in the structure of this challenge loan, the foundation is expressing to the community that, hey, continue to work towards that end to ensure, and if we see that continuing to happen, we'll convert it to a grant. So it's very explicit about its conversion. We're not concerned about it converting because we will continue to do the work that we're already doing. We don't consider it competition with other fundraising because it's the continued fundraising for the program that we've done for many years already. Obviously the largest donors to the program are those who benefit from it. They're the employees that are using the loans and things like that that are out in the community. We have a waiting list of employees that was compelling to the foundation as well, and they said, well, look, we're glad to support it. We want others to continue supporting it. So let us structure it in this way. It's, yes, not as easy as a straight grant, but from my perspective, it seems like a fair approach to a partnership with the foundation.
Mr. Gisselman. Mr. Peckham.
Thank you. I would make a motion that we decline this loan, but we change our view of the offer and view it as an offer of a donation, and direct staff to pursue sufficient additional donations from the community in order to get the fund to $1 million, at which point we would trot over to the Judd S. Alexander Foundation and ask for the donation at that point.
So a motion to not approve.
Just a point of order, though. A motion has to be made in the positive. So that said, it would probably be better process if we were to defer action on this item until one of two things happen. We either have secured commitments to get to the $1 million from the private sector, A, or until the foundation would convert this to a straight grant. So one of those two things that eliminates the municipal risk should happen before we consider this item, and you wouldn't need to vote at all. I mean, we don't want to make a motion in the negative and then all vote for it, because I think that's not right.
I mean, I would only really entertain a motion in the positive that included a contingency for Finance Committee review. I think that's the only fair way to approach this because they are tasked with considering things like bringing on more reportable debt for the city.
Here's my thought on this. Live It Up has achieved such fantastic things. It's won awards, and it's achieved statewide notoriety on its own without anything like this in the past. And we shouldn't need something structured like this to get where we are going. We've not needed it to date. And so I love that the foundation wants to help and be part of this. But at the end of the day, if that string has to be attached that causes us to incur reportable public debt, then how interested are they really in participating? If they love the project that much, it should either be a straight grant or, we should bring it in with commitments from the private sector already in tow. And this really creates an obligation for us in the short term that I don't think would be viewed positively by the public. So I think we should table the whole thing until we have either firm commitments or until we can get that contingency removed, for that potential payback. Because for us to report debt on this really, I think, detracts from all of the success Live It Up has had alone.
I would go back to Mr. Peckham, hearing that, Pat, are you interested in proposing a motion in the positive of any nature for us to consider?
I would have no great misgivings if we delayed this, but I would I think we could make a motion in the positive to direct staff to pursue sufficient donations to qualify for, instead of a loan, it would be a grant. It could be viewed as a grant and would not be accepted as a loan toward this same end.
We could direct staff by consensus, though. We don't have to have a formal motion. Your motion is to approve or deny. So if we all agree by consensus that we want Chris to go back and negotiate with the foundation or with the private sector to make something different happen that's more palpable, that doesn't create that obligation, I think we could do it by consensus and we wouldn't have to vote.
How does the committee feel about that? I have a nod, and I am nodding.
That's fine. Yeah, we don't mind doing that.
Very good.
Of course.
Thank
Fine
you.
with me. Thank you.
Okay, on that note, gentlemen, I have to exit because I have a commitment at 6:30.
Okay, thank you. Number 15, discussion and possible action on the potential release of an RFP for demolition and salvage services for the Great Lakes Cheese properties on DeVoe Street.
So we're aware of, we're working with Great Lakes Cheese about the acceptance window, which is fast approaching. They have obviously completed their new facility on Innovation Way. We will be receiving that property shortly in pursuance to the development agreement. When we own the property, we'd like to have it evaluated from a demolition and a salvage services perspective, to look at what could be salvaged, what would be the cost of demolition and restoration if that's so chosen. And so we'd like to issue an RFP for that, which we could always, as staff and the administration could always do, but we've usually asked the committee, give you an update that we're going to, ask your permission to release an RFP, and then have, obviously we'll release it and have those RFP results for review by the committee in the coming months here, in the hopes of then determining kind of the strategy for the site.
What is the committee's pleasure?
I would move that we approve going forward with an RFP and add a clause that the park department is given the option of salvaging the very nice long stretch of attractive green fence along the River Edge Trail for possible use for the dog park.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't mind approving that, but just to be clear, that is not on the, Great Lakes Cheese property. I think the fence is on the parks, you can do that now.
And this
if
is
you
not really
wanted
related to the RFP for the services that are required, so.
Yeah, if you wanted to salvage the fence, the Parks Committee could salvage the fence tomorrow. I don't think there's anything.
Well, it's,
Mr.
Or do you
well,
mean
just
their
speaking to that
fencing?
point, I think that green fence is a vital part of that walkway, and I would really be opposed to any sense of moving that fence that's that's an integral part of.
It's on the west side of the trail, though.
Yeah, it's on the water side of the trail, I think.
West side.
West side, yeah.
West side would be the one.
Excuse me, the east
water
side.
side. The east
It's on the
side.
building side. It's
The
part
building
of
side,
Great
correct.
Lakes Cheese property, I believe.
Correct, yeah.
That's correct.
I don't know
Unless we're
who's,
willing to develop that in a, but that's not on the agenda, so I'll speak to that somewhere else.
Okay, very good. Anything else on the item? I'd entertain a motion to approve, please.
So what about
Or
the,
okay. So you had your
the fence was-
addendum.
Was the fence part of the motion?
I guess, but just to clarify, so you want the fence that's on the landward side of the trail, which is owned, do you believe it's owned by Great Lakes Cheese? Yes. Okay, and you want that, but not the green fence on the other side of the, there's also a green fence on.
We want all the green fence we can get.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to clarify what the motion is.
So I guess maybe the wording would be with the option of a city department salvaging fencing on the perimeter of the property.
Okay,
I see no problem with the RFP having a mention in it about the desire
Yeah,
to
that's fine. We'll do that.
salvage the fence, and then whether or not we take it or not, that will be determined by somebody else. Okay, anything else? Seeing none, all in favor, I haven't had a second yet. Was there a second? Okay, there it is. Further? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Mine, no.
and one no.
okay.
Updates, please.
Yes, updates. So just, we've had in the past couple days kickoff meetings with the consultant related to both the South Riverfront Area Plan and the Towers Area Plan. So both of those plans are going on. As you know, we affectionately refer to 2019 as a year of plans. We have a variety of things going on, all within the broader strategy of looking at these kind of key areas. The South Riverfront Plan includes the area south of Washington, and, you know, it's already engaging a stakeholder group, which includes the county, new businesses like the Whitewater Music Hall, which will be opening in the former Masons Building, the Farmers Market Board, WPS, of course, yep, and some of the other stakeholders. So that is starting. And they will, you know, the planning firm will be working with that group to develop recommendations for that area, kind of a examination of market opportunities, and then some suggestions for the area. So we're excited about that. They'll be marching along. The Towers Area Plan, as you may recall, is kind of the area that we coined for kind of surrounding blocks that the city controls, namely the 120 Scott and Catholic block parcels, and then their adjacent neighbors. It's a section of downtown that essentially is adjacent to the towers, so we called it the Towers Plan. That plan also kicked off, met with the stakeholder team, which include many of the private landlords that surround those blocks. And is focusing, as you know, on parking capacity analysis, determining future ideas for the McClellan ramp, and expectations at the Catholic block, and redevelopment potential at 120 Scott and some other parcels that are in kind of that immediate vicinity, and adjacent, and kind of the adjacent areas. So just to keep you updated on that. And on Sears, we're continuing to work with Lockery and Company on kind of a refined proposal. Given the feedback that the committee gave them last time, they've been working on coming up with some, you know, thoughts as to what they would most likely do with the property, what methodology they would deploy in repositioning it, and how they would go about marketing it if they controlled the property. And we hope to have some specificity on that in the coming meetings. They've been working, obviously, their main priority has been finalizing Mountain Lanes and getting that project going. So that's it.
Very good. Anything else from the committee? Mr. Martins?
Quick question on these, on both the South Riverfront and Downtown Towers plans. Are there open workshops scheduled for these? Do you have any idea of a time frame on those?
Yes, there will be open workshops scheduled. The kickoff meeting, of course, was including staff and stakeholders. We believe, I think June 7th, I think we were looking at June 7th and June 8th as an opportunity. They will, I know for the farmer, or for the riverfront plan, we wanted an opportunity for them to interact with many of the farmers market vendors in the area, including the Bull Falls Market and the Summer Market, and some other users along the trail and the kayak course. And kayak users and things like that. So they're going to have a workshop. I think we're shooting for Saturday the 8th to engage some of those folks. And I think the afternoon of Friday the 7th would also be kind of a time. So we'll make sure to publish that information. It'll be obviously agendized publicly. We'll be obviously putting out press releases on it and including everyone when they're actually set. But I think that's our goal at the moment, to try to get that finalized in the next couple of days and get that information out.
All right.
Very good. Yes, Judith, please. Your name, address, and 3 minutes, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Neal. Judith Miller, 903 Kickbush Street, Wausau. I may be out of order here, but since you have Mr. Schock present and you're talking about updates in city development, the developers who are looking at the mall, who came from Michigan, have they gotten back? I would kind of assume they'd come back to this committee. As I say, I may have missed this. Have they come back to you with any recommendations, plans, et cetera? I'm not aware of that, and if you could speak to that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I don't mind speaking to it if you want. Sure, we can send you, the folks from Michigan were the planners that we hired. They're not necessarily developers, but they have finalized, of course, but they have finalized their recommendations. They're on the website. We can email them to you. You can see, they completed a market assessment and then a series of, kind of options, or what they thought were the most likely redevelopment paths that would be possible at the mall, and how they recommended breaking it up and doing some different things. So they did make a presentation on that, but I'll be sure to email you the, kind of information, the plan and the presentations that they made. It's on our website, and if you have any thoughts on that, let us know.
Okay. Do you have any, has the committee or the council or anyone decided to head in a direction that way? Or?
Well, yeah, good question.
The thing is, this information is really there to show possibilities to possible developers, either the current mall owners or somebody else. It's not really actionable on our part, other than we can look at it and go, yes, we love that, or maybe we can partner in some way, but it's really for the private sector to look at some potentials and say, oh, I really like Plan B or whatever.
So that's been proposed to the mall developers, put to them as well.
they've
The
said
mall
yes.
owners,
The mall
I should
owners,
say.
yes.
Sorry, my verbiage is not the best.
That's all right.
But I'm not in your business. So thank you, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Nobody wants to be in our business, but to clarify, the mall, the mall ownership, being that it's the lender, I think we've been clear a couple times that it's unlikely. We don't expect them to actually implement any of those plans. They really are plans that are set in motion for future owners. And I think we had, shared last time that planning process and the market study was one reason why Lockery, development came forward and presented or, expressed interest in buying Sears, because they were thinking of implementing some of the recommendations of the plan, which could include its, kind of repositioning. So we'll see where that leads. We do continue to wait for the, we are in a bit of a holding pattern with the mall owner to, before they make a decision, and we continue to encourage them to sell the mall so that it can move forward.
Okay, that concludes our agenda for the evening. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Peckham, a second, please. Mr. Martins, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? And none are. Thank you.